Have you ever looked at your life from the outside and thought, this looks fine? I have a job, I show up, I keep it together, and yet something underneath the surface just feels off. Like you're performing a version of yourself rather than actually living as yourself. Maybe you've noticed a pattern that keeps showing up, a relationship that goes nowhere, the way you shrink in a room full of people, the relentless inner critic that never gives you a break. And no matter how much you know better, you just can't seem to do better. What if I told you that's not a character flaw? It's not a weakness, and it is absolutely not something you need to fix. What if those patterns, every single one of them, are actually parts of you that are working incredibly hard to keep you safe based on something that happened a very long time ago? That is the doorway we're walking through today. And I've so been looking forward to bringing this conversation to you guys. My guest today is Lori Nouchka. I keep messing it up. You're a therapist, an embodied coach, and a spiritual guide who is based in London. Your own story of heartbreak, self-abandonment, and ultimately profound healing led you to build a practice centered on one of the most transformational therapeutic frameworks I think I've ever encountered: internal family systems therapy, or what many simply call the parts work. Lori has worked with thousands of people. She's led workshops inside places like Google, DeepMind. Her creative works have been featured in Vogue, The Guardian, The Times. But what brings her to this microphone today is something far more personal: a willingness to pull back the curtain on the parts of herself she spent years running from, and to show you exactly how she came home to herself. In this episode, we're going to give you a new language for your inner world. And once you have it, you can't unhear it. But before we dive in, if this is your first time here, welcome to Collective Guidance Podcast. I'm your host, Charlotte Goodnight, a mindset and wellness educator with over 30 years in this work. And this show exists for one reason: to guide you through your growth, through your healing, and to guide you home to who you've always been. If today's episode moves you, I promise you it will, because Lori and I have already had a great hour conversation, and she is just this incredible soul. Please take 10 minutes, hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening. Every subscriber tells the universe, I want more of this, and it helps us reach people who need this message most. Now, let's get into it. Lori, welcome for the second time. Thank you so much for coming back and talking with me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Any opportunity to talk about this work with someone such as yourself is a true honor, really.
Yeah, you know, before you were a therapist and spiritual guide, you were producing youth arts at Roundhouse in London, running a fashion brand sold in Soho House, and you were living a very full outward life. Yet underneath the surface, there was something that was like unraveling in you. Take us back. What was actually going on inside of you that no one in the outside world could really see?
Yeah, well, in all honesty, I don't think I could see it either. I didn't know that was what was essentially running my life, this part of me, which I think a lot of people will relate to. It was a part of me that felt like I wasn't enough. And it all sort of kicked up, or at least began an incarnation at the end of a long-term relationship in my mid-20s, when my partner at the time ended our relationship quite abruptly, although now I reflect back, it was sort of, on the horizon in a way. But I took that to mean that I was not enough for him. And, the more I do this work, the more I realize that probably stemmed from an even earlier experience. But it was kicked up at this time. And I think what's really important even in this moment to say is that in that early experience that I may or may not have had, I don't blame my caregivers for that or my parents for that. They were absolutely doing the best they could. And, an experience of or a feeling of not enoughness could come from a simple experience of crying in your cot and someone taking longer than normal to come. And you then condition this story, this belief in yourself that they're not coming, and that means I'm not important enough for them. And of course, when you're really young, you depend upon your caregivers for survival. So that, those incarnations or those experiences of early childhood start to develop these belief systems. And that was what I was carrying around, this idea that I wasn't enough. And it led me on to years of chasing, primarily through romantic partnerships, other partners who fundamentally were not available for a relationship with me, as a way, unconsciously, to try and repair this belief that I wasn't enough. I was outsourcing that idea that someone else validating me being enough would make me whole again. And after years of chasing, I realized this isn't working. This is a pattern that keeps on repeating, and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not feeling any better about it. Your dog agrees.
Yes, she does. She does. I don't know what that's about. You're exactly right.
She's like, I know what you're talking about there. And so I sought to go on a path of healing myself, essentially, which led me quite serendipitously to a therapist who works with internal family systems as part of what she does. Because often IFS is integrated into a wider modality of therapeutic practices, which you'll learn more about the way I incorporate that as we talk. But that's where I ended up. And I thought, it was so transformative. And I got to a place of being able to heal this part of me who felt that I wasn't enough. And by healing, what I mean is not rejecting it or trying to fix it, but by bringing it closer into me and offering it the love that it felt it didn't have at the time, and the acknowledgement it didn't have at the time, but not from an outsource, but from me. And that's where this work is so powerful.
You talked about how you did, leading up to this moment of finding internal family systems, that you did yoga, breath work, meditation. You were doing all the things. What happened in that first session of internal family systems that made you realize, wow, this is different than anything that I've done so far? Like, what did that session look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that I found yoga and meditation to be incredibly powerful. And I'm sure many of your listeners can relate to this, not least because of its nature of, if you're able to expand out and connect to your more spiritual nature, that more expansive place where your humanness in a way can, if you're able to, can kind of slightly drop away. And I found myself in meditations where I was really expansive and connecting out in this really powerful way that I'd never experienced before. So it was kind of quite transcendental. And for all the stuff that was going on inside me, I was able to have these moments of respite and feel, I mean, if one for a better term, quite high on this feeling. But then I come back down to ground and my humanness would carry on humaning. And so, I guess it's what they often call, you like that. There's often what they call spiritual bypassing, I guess, where you can just get high on the supply of that connection to source energy. And I was acutely aware, but I'm also human. I'm having a very real material experience here, a very embodied experience as well. So I just by chance found this therapist who quite honestly, I went to her because she was just had an energy about her that I really felt drawn to. She was very warm and caring and loving. And as the sessions went on, often I would be describing scenarios that were happening in my life, and she would pause me and we would enter into what I now understand is a part of me and connecting to that. And what it did was it dropped me down from my head into my body, connect to the source of where that part of me lived, because these parts of us do live in our body. And, you know, whether I felt that tightness in my chest as I really connected to that part, or the ache in my belly. And it was just so powerful because it gave me the space to feel very viscerally the sensations of what I never felt safe to feel at the time. You know, if you take me back to that experience of my partner leaving at the time, it was so painful. But I was doing everything I possibly could to numb it out, going out all the time, drinking, socializing till, you know, the early hours, everything, not talking about it, everything I could do to just get through this pain. And what I met in this work was the part of me who never got to fully experience that. And what's on the other side of that is so much freedom, because you're no longer constrained by the fear of the sensations that are going to come up when you really go into that pain. You recognize, okay, when you're held with someone who can support you to safely move through that, not only is it so cathartic, it expands your nervous system capacity to then know that, okay, well, this doesn't mean I don't then not get into another relationship out of fear of this happening again. It means that I will get into a relationship, firstly, with someone who I'm not chasing, and secondly, knowing that if it ends, which it may well do, I will survive, and I can sit with that pain and the grief that comes up with it, not run away from it. So, you know, I guess that explains how transformative it was for me. And I sincerely felt not only do I need to share this work, but I need to train in it and incorporate it into the work I'm already doing.
Yeah, let's go back to something that you keep mentioning, just because I know that there's people that maybe some listeners have heard of IFS, which is internal family systems, and maybe some people haven't. They're encountering it the first time listening to this, and they're like, what are they talking about? Is it IFS, IVS? Like, what is going on here? You know, like, so when you are saying parts of yourself, what are you talking about? Not necessarily the clinical definition, but the human one. And most importantly, how are they showing up in our life?
Yeah. I mean, first off, you gave a great intro to them in the introduction. So I want to just, you know, highlight that if people want to go back and listen to that at any point. But to further that, essentially parts are when we had experiences, often as young children, not always, but often as young children, that somehow installed a belief system, a story, a pattern in us that we are still carrying through now as adults. We haven't essentially realized that we are no longer at that age anymore. Those parts of us don't see us as an adult yet.
Right. And the reason why they're stored is because from the age of birth to like 8 years old, that is when your brain is really taking in the programs, the beliefs, correct?
Yeah, it's in part that, but it's also because between the ages of at least, I don't know, 0 to probably 8, if not more actually, we rely on our caregivers to keep us alive. And so fundamentally, if we feel a rupture in that connection in any way, shape or form, it creates deep fear enough that we are not going to survive. And we create stories around that. So I go back to the cot example. My mum isn't coming, and if she doesn't come, I am not going to survive. And that's, you know, maybe a more unconscious realization, but within that is my mum's not coming because she doesn't love me. So we build these stories in these beliefs, and therefore we then continue to repeat these, because at the time we didn't know how to process that feeling of fear of essentially not surviving, not being alive. I mean, if we really get down to the core of it, it's the ultimate act of life, which is death. And how could you possibly process the magnitude of that at that age? So what we're doing as adults is recognizing, okay, so we're not reliant on caregivers anymore. We are adults now, and how we in turn become, in a way, a parent to that inner child that is in terror. Firstly, support it to feel what it never got to feel. And secondly, let it know you are there and you're not going anywhere. So yeah, that's kind of a potted example of what parts are. And I should just add that often these parts are working really hard to protect us from a deeper feeling, such as grief or sadness, all the things that we tend to run away from or find difficult, or we kind of give it tarnish the brush with, this isn't a feeling I ever want to have, or it's a bad feeling, or it's an uncomfortable feeling. So we tend to avoid it through our protectors, who might get angry when we're sad, or might sort of, reject someone because actually we don't want to feel that sadness. Coming back to the relationship example, I'd rather avoid, I'm just not into that person, because fundamentally, actually, what we're really afraid of is if we open up to the possibility of connection, that it could be taken away and we would have to feel that grief, that sadness again. And it's recognizing that we are both safe to do that and able to do that now.
Yeah. And if someone isn't aware of this, then they just keep running in the same patterns, right? Yeah. And so the patterns keep showing up in work, in relationships, and not until you get really aware is it going to stop showing up, correct?
Yeah, I'd say when you become aware, you are then able to support and heal them, to give them what they never got at the time. And by virtue, they do change, because we're not trying to get them to change. And that's not to say, I think this is really important to emphasize, not to say these parts just disappear. You just build a new relationship with them. And over time, they don't become so activated. But for the most part, we are carrying them around for a lot of our lives. And you learn to love them rather than reject them. You learn to give them what they need. And in that place, your nervous system calms down and you're able to move forward with clarity rather than with fear, ultimately.
And a lot of times in leadership, right? A person that looks like they totally have it all together on the outside. They're high achieving, responsible, always showing up for everyone else, taking care of everyone else, getting shit done. And they look like a badass in life. Very often, that is just the protector that is doing this. How do you help someone see that their greatest strengths of leadership and like showing up for everyone, being super responsible, is actually their protector?
Yeah, there's a few things there, because I work with a lot of people who display such patterns or ways of being in the world. And I think the first thing that's really important to say is that we're not demonizing the person who has the capacity to lead, or the person who is really generous and kind and puts everyone else first. That is these are wonderful qualities, but it's us recognizing when they're coming from a place of trying to essentially unconsciously get some sort of return from it, such as affirmation that I'm enough, the kind of status aspect that often comes with leadership, wanting to chase that thing in order you get the affirmation, because it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough because it's just a constant thing. So often what happens is people come to me when they're burnt out from having done these things, having chased that affirmation, or having been the person who's constantly taking care of everyone else, constantly people pleasing, and then being feeling hugely let down. And finally saying, I'm done with this. I want to find a different way that feels more aligned with me. And that doesn't mean you then stop being a generous person, but you're coming at generosity not as a place to satiate this part of you who needs that affirmation, but because you can, and then you let it go. And it's a far more empowered place. You're free from the shackles of approval from everyone else, and you've constantly got your own back, and you have that capacity to pivot and change as and when you need. You're not afraid of letting people down or of having to achieve or accomplish this thing in order to get that affirmation, because it's your sense of worth, your wholeness is inherent. You truly understand that. And it leads to a far more creative, expansive life that's, just so much more free, so much more free.
So I'm going to get a little personal. I didn't disclose this in the last conversation, but it really had me thinking, someone very dear to my heart said to me one day, it's all about you. It really hurt me really bad when they said that, because my take on the relationship that I had had and with this group of people that I had had was I constantly gave to them, and I constantly put myself aside for the betterment of the group and the people involved. Now, that's the protector that was doing that, because the protector only wanted harmony in life. And if I can just constantly give to other people, and I know that therefore then the relationship's going to be harmonious, and I don't have to deal with anyone being upset, then I will sacrifice. That's a protector, right?
Yeah, beautifully kind of self-aware there. Yeah, absolutely. Because the question then becomes, what happens to you if there isn't harmony in a relationship?
Right.
And you asked that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to ask that question. And while I did get upset because I was like, this shit has never been about me, maybe subconsciously there was something that was about me, because I wanted everyone to be happy and I wanted harmonious relationship with everyone. So I would do whatever it took to have that. And that is protector. And that's a pattern too.
Yeah.
And so when we notice patterns about ourselves, a lot of times, after I recognized that pattern, I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that pattern anymore. No, I'm only going to do what I want to do. And so when we recognize a pattern, we try and go to war with it, or we shame it into this submission place. I haven't done the work on IFS, approach that can help dissolve the pattern. So tell us about how patterns work with IFS.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a beautiful example. I asked that question there, which is, what happens if there isn't harmony in a relationship, especially when we're younger, if we've witnessed a rupture in relationships around us because there was disharmony. Inherently, we are still following through with this pattern, which is, I must keep everyone else around me feeling great, everything harmonious, because if not, it's all going to rupture. And then it depends on how people feel, but it might be something along the lines of, I will be alone. Everyone's going to go because I saw people around me disappear. Maybe it's a parent or whatever. And this fundamental then fear of the aloneness, and that comes back to that survival thing, which is, if I'm alone, I may not survive. And so what we do there is we go straight to the heart. Well, I don't say straight to, it's a very gentle journey, but we get to the heart of that has come up, which is desperately trying to protect you. And we acknowledge it. We say, thank you. I mean, this part has been working so hard for so long to keep you alive, and it's done an amazing job. You're alive. However, we're also getting the opportunity to say to this part, we're now here to show you that you're safe. And what nearly always happens is that part realizes that, and it's like your whole nervous system just softens and it sees the opportunity to relax, which possibly it's never done in its life. It gets the opportunity for us to say, well, now that you're not having to work so hard, what do you want to do with your time? And often it's things like, I want to go out and I want to play. I want to go and create. I want to go and spend my time, swimming in the mornings rather than getting myself head up about what I've got to do for everyone else in order to make sure that everything is going to stay as it is so that I can survive. And so there's this, comes back to the freedom piece, that this part of you gets to unleash in a way, this even deeper part of you who's got desires that have never been able to be acknowledged or seen or to occur because they've been so shrouded in this part of you in fear. And ultimately, that part of you in fear, as I say, is trying to protect a much deeper, what we call exiled feeling, which has been massively demonized, again, through no one's fault, but just because either we were told you can't feel that way, or we were just never given the space to feel it in a healthy way. So I think that answers your question. I've sort of forgotten what the question was, but I think it answers.
Yeah, no, it totally did. When we are able to release some of those patterns, recognize them, it gives us more freedom to experience joy. Mine always comes back to, well, what would you do if you didn't have that? How would it, open you up? And I'm like, joy, like laughter, fun, being silly, like not taking things so seriously.
Absolutely. And I just want to say there, unsurprisingly, because they were incarnated in childhood, and that's what we want to do as children. We want to play. We want to have fun. We're not caught up in the dramas of life as we are as an adult. And so there's this beautiful, I feel, healing part to this, which is where you get to go back to that child you who didn't get the chance to do some of those things and give it to them now. And just, one thing on the pattern thing is to say that, as I said a while back, which is, these parts will still keep coming up. We can't expect them just overnight to disappear, especially if they've been around for 20, 30, 40 years. They're a part of us, and they're a part that we learn to love and take care of, not a part that we are wanting to reject. So what happens is, an example being in the case of where I was chasing partnership, that part still comes up in me and I witness it and I say, I see you now. Not I'm just going to follow through with this. I see you. Let's come and sit together and really hear what's going on here. And, we get down to the core of why that part's still being driven towards that person. And once it's soothed and it's able to set that, actually often more, in fact, always that attraction or that sort of desire really dissipates. And it's like, okay, I understand actually what's really right and healthy for me. And that isn't it.
And let's just breathe into it. Breathe into it and connect. Yeah, make space for it. You said something about nervous system, and I've done a lot of work with Joe Dispenza, gone to a lot of his meditations, and really have dove into nervous system work. What role does the nervous system play in IFS?
I mean, it's everything really. It's the story. It's the hard drive of our experiences, our nervous system. So one of the first things we often do as we're going through the practice of connecting to parts is to identify where we feel it in our body, where we sense it in our body. And anyone who has a body will know that if we're feeling anxious, it expresses itself through, a clenching in the belly or a tightness in the chest or a feeling of weight on the shoulders. That is the nervous system in real time. It's like it's doing its thing. It's energy in motion that's expressing itself for a moment to say, something doesn't feel right. Of course, more often than not, we just don't listen to it, or we pop a pill to get rid of it. And, in that sense, the nervous system is just constantly activated in ways that aren't representative of real-time threat to our survival. They are storage systems of past examples of where we felt under threat.
I love that. Storage systems of parts
of us that had experiences earlier on in our life. And because we weren't able to process what ultimately a feeling is, energy moving through the body, we weren't allowed to, didn't feel safe to feel it and let it move. It gets stuck. And so our whole body is like an imprint of history. And so when someone says something that activates that part of us that thinks I'm not good enough, it shows up, we feel it viscerally. And yet again, we numb it out with a drink. We take the pill to get rid of the headache that's come on, or whatever it might be. And so the nervous system is everything. And it's the most incredible signifier of what's going on for us. And it's the most incredible place for healing too. It is the center of all healing, and which is why, although I advocate hugely for talking therapy, I truly believe it can only go so far. The classic book, The Body Keeps the Score, Gabor Mate's work, Joe Dispenza, everyone is talking about these things, and for very good reason. It is, as I say, the hard drive of our experiences.
I really think that your work is set apart from other people's work because you describe this not just as therapy, but as a spiritual practice. You've said that it's through connecting to our human experience that we really get to meet our higher self. And I want you to just define that for me. What do you mean with that? Is it through IFS or just in general?
Yeah. Well, IFS is a very powerful place to connect with higher self, and I see that because when we are connecting to the parts of us which are incarnated through very human experiences, we have to go into a deeper layer of unconsciousness because it was when we were 2, 3 years old. So if we try and think our way through it, what we need to do is feel it, and we need to fully remember it, not through moment by moment experience. In fact, often suddenly a memory comes to us that we've only just remembered of an experience that we had when we were in those layers. And so we enter into that deeper layer of consciousness, and it in a way creates this expansive place for us to just feel more safe to feel, because we're not outwardly sort of out there talking and feeling this thing. We're inwardly tending to it. And then in time, over a session, that part softens, as I've spoke about. And when that part softens, there's a kind of freeing feeling. And in that freeing space is a space where what I call higher self, in IFS, it's often referred to as self with a capital S, sometimes higher self. And higher self is a frequency that we invite in, which is essentially at its purest form, the essence of love. And it comes in, and it's not part, it is a self, which is, again, this spiritual aspect of us, this soul level. I don't know. I find it difficult to put words to it. It's just a knowing. It's a feeling of a presence of love who can be with your humanity and who is with you, alongside you, offering nothing but pure divine love. And when we're caught up in our human experience and when we're here on this very material conscious plane, certainly for me, I find it quite difficult to connect with that. So entering through, the IFS model and healing a part of you creates this expansiveness. And I similarly find it when I'm out in nature. I go out for a swim and maybe there's a lot on my mind, and then I feel into the nature of the ocean, and I feel it on my skin and that sense of the sun on my face. And that's also for me a real entry point for that higher self energy. And everyone will find their way, but the beauty of IFS is that it often happens quite spontaneously for people as well. And it becomes this incredible energy you can call upon when you are feeling overwhelmed, and you go through the process of connecting to parts And then you call upon higher self energy, and it's just, I mean, mine has the kind of archetype of the divine mother, and it's like I feel so deeply held by her. She's a she, and it's the greatest gift I've ever received was to connect to higher self energy, and I wish that for everyone, really.
Isn't it so beautiful when you have a connection with your soul? One of my favorite practices is looking in the mirror and saying, "Hey, babe, I got you. You know, we came in this human experience. We're doing this. We have gone through it all, and I have always been here for you, loving you and caring for you, and just, I'm your biggest fan." And when we get really connected to our soul self, we can look at ourselves in the mirror and be like, "Hey, I got you. I got your back." Like, there's one person that will always remain, and it is me. I will always be here for you. You are never alone. For listeners right now who are hearing this and thinking, yeah, I see this, I feel this, like I know this, I see my patterns, but I don't know how to do anything differently. Where do you invite them to start? You know, make it just one simple step that they could possibly do today to get back to their soul self.
I mean, one simple step that I would always invite anyone to do is to get outside, take off your shoes, feel the sun on your face, turn your phone off. You know, everyone, I hope, can do that to a certain extent. Even if you live in a city, I live in London. Just before this, I was out. The sun's come out. It's been a pretty grey few days, and I was, quite up in my head. And I just went out and I felt the sun on my face, and it was like, a reset.
Mm.
So, that's a simple invitation. But the nature of the way I work is to acknowledge that we can both do that. And often, certainly for me, it's quite a quick moment to expand out into that universal connection. But also, we are human, and we carry we're having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So not to try and escape that or bypass that in any way, to really acknowledge that, which is where IFS is so powerful.
Yeah, you have a free inner parts meditation that you created as just a gentle entry point. And I really love and appreciate how you are not like, "Oh, they can just get my meditation." Like, I get to mention it for people. It just shows your humility and your genuine soul beauty essence. You are just such a beautiful light. But you have a free inner parts meditation that you created just as a gentle entry point into this work. Walk us through what someone will experience when they press play on that. What's that experience going to be like?
Yeah. So I created this meditation for my clients, my regular clients, when they're not with me and they maybe feel quite activated. And I thought, actually, this is a great thing to share with a wider community. But essentially, it's a roughly about 15-minute meditation. And, the invitation is to be in a place where you're not disturbed and you can be comfortable. And you're guided to recognize if there are any parts present for you. And that will happen very quickly, in so much as the way I guide you through it was just to listen to perhaps something that's happened that day, but maybe there isn't any activation. And in fact, what I then invite you to do is maybe think of something that is quite present for you in your life. And by virtue, often those parts will get quite activated. So let's just say you're having a difficult time with your partner. They haven't been pulling their weight and you're feeling quite aggravated by it. And so we get that part in that feels, I'm doing all the work around here. I'm pissed. I feel angry. I feel pissed off at them, and I feel a bit sort of disrespected. And whatever part might come up, we then sit with it and we really listen to it and we tend to it and we give it the space that it's really wanting. So parts work is a hugely spacious practice in a way that we live in such a fast-paced world and try to numb everything out, as I've said, or avoid it. This is an intentional walking towards these parts giving them some attention, giving them what they need, giving them a voice to be heard, soothing them. And by virtue then saying, okay, once we come out of this, we've got to, we're not activated from that part anymore. So maybe it looks like I need to just have a conversation with my partner, not from a heightened place of aggravation, but from a place of, actually, could we talk about the divvying up of who's doing what in the house? Because I'm feeling quite tired and I could really do with some support. And this is what that would look like for me. Would that be okay with you? So in other words, coming to be with our parts in order to then come back to life from a place of clarity and peace and calm rather than activation.
Yeah, nice. Last question. I want you to answer this as if you're directly speaking to the one person that almost did not press play and the one who thought, you know what, this probably isn't for me. I don't really need to learn about IFS. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that they don't need to be fixed. And I think this is a culture we live in, which is I need to fix this problem I have. And I want them to know that they don't need to do that. What they need to do is take the time and space. And we're not talking lots of time here, just a bit of time to get to know these parts who hold so much wisdom. And by virtue of us being with them and taking care of them, they will change. We don't want to force change upon ourselves. We can take care of ourselves, love those parts even more. Like anything you love even more, it just softens down. It feels held, it feels seen, it feels acknowledged, it feels loved. And by virtue, change happens. So change doesn't come by force or fixing. It comes by bringing those things closer into you, those patterns, those beliefs, those stories, and loving them and listening to them and letting them feel held and giving them what they never got at the time in order to be able to step back, hopefully go off and have some fun and play whilst you step forward as an adult, and the changes will naturally happen.
I love that. You don't need to fix anything. Thank you, Lori. This conversation is everything I hoped it would be. This is the second time that we recorded, and it is a little bit different than the first time we recorded. And I'm so in love with you. I really am. The first conversation when the recording didn't work well and I walked away and I told my partner, I was like, she is just like a breath of fresh air, so light, so soft, so wise. And it just is a continuation of that. So thank you for your courage, your tenderness, and your absolute refusal to make healing feel like one more thing that we have to fix about ourselves. And that right there is everything, because in this day and age, it's all about fixing ourselves. And it only contributes to us thinking that there is something wrong with us. And your wisdom in this is really shown that there is nothing wrong with us, that we are perfectly imperfect the way that we are. So you guys, I hope you felt that. I hope something in this conversation cracked something open for you a little, even if it was just like a little bitty crack. Maybe it did that some light can come through and some understanding on this, because that's where it starts. It doesn't start with a dramatic overhaul. It starts with just a little bit of light getting in and a little bit of remembrance, and then can take off from there. But you can find Lori on her website, and I will put that in the show notes. You can also follow her on Instagram, and I'll add that. I highly recommend starting with her free inner parts meditation. And Lori, you are taking clients if someone wants to work with you, right?
I am, and I mostly see my clients online. So I have clients that are all over the world. So for your US audience, yeah, I am.
Okay, great. You guys, if this episode landed for you, please share it with the person who needs it, like, subscribe, all that great stuff. And until next time, just keep growing, keep remembering, keep feeling, keep showing up for yourself, and keep coming home. Look in the mirror and tell yourself how much you love yourself. and that you have your back. Thank you, you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.